It's a Heidel minicast. And now, Scott Clark.
Today's Heidelcast comes from W. Robert Godfrey's essay, Calvin and Theonomy. And this is from the volume Theonomy, A Reformed Critique, edited by William S. Barker and W. Robert Godfrey, published by Zondervan in 1990. And our reading begins on page 302 as he's explaining how Calvin understood the threefold distinction in the law of God.
If the Heidelcast helps you, won't you help us keep it going? You can make the coffer clink by clicking on the PayPal link on the Heidel blog or by mailing a check to Heidelberg Reformation Association, 1637 East Valley Parkway, number 391, Escondido, California, 92027.
Bob writes, Calvin begins his reasoning with the common division of the Mosaic law into moral, ceremonial, and judicial elements. The key distinction for Calvin between the moral and the ceremonial or judicial laws is that the moral law is unchangeable, whereas the ceremonial and judicial laws are changeable. Calvin summarizes the moral law as, quote, an unchangeable rule of right living, close quote. Quoting again, the perpetual law of love, close quote, and, quoting again, justice, humanity, and gentleness, close quote. For Calvin, different nations appropriately have diverse constitutions because the nations are shaped by distinctive historical circumstances. Yet all these different constitutions rest on the equity of the moral law, which is natural and common to all nations. Calvin sees this unchanging moral law as the foundation of all particular civil laws. The moral law is the equity or the common, natural basis of all civil law. Calvin discusses equity further in these terms, quoting here from Institutes 4, 2016. The law of God, which we call the moral law, is nothing else than a testimony of natural law and of that conscience which God has engraved upon the minds of men. Consequently, the entire scheme of this equity of which we are now speaking has been prescribed in it. Hence, this equity alone must be the goal and rule and limit of all laws. Calvin elaborates on this natural knowledge in his commentary on Romans. Quoting here, we cannot conclude from this passage that there is in men a full knowledge of the law, but only that there are some seeds of justice implanted in their nature. This is evidenced by such facts as these, that all the Gentiles alike institute religious rites, make laws to punish adultery, theft, and murder. There is therefore a certain natural knowledge of the law. Calvin seems to be saying that the basic moral law is objectively revealed in nature so as to be available to mankind, and that the human conscience is so created that it responds to that law. In the fallen state, man's conscience is seared, yet the conscience remains and perceives something of the equity or essence of the moral law. Such perception is not saving or even adequate by itself for a just society, yet some elements of the moral law are perceived even in a pagan society. Calvin applies these thoughts about the moral law to the conclusion that all political constitutions properly rest on the equity of that moral law of God. Distinctive circumstances of different nations will result in different political laws from place to place and from time to time. Yet these diversities of laws are simply applications of the moral law to specific local needs.
Thanks for listening. Tune in tomorrow for more from the Heidelcast, brought to you by HeidelbergReformationAssociation.org. Don't forget, when the coin in the coffer clinks, the cost of bandwidth shrinks. Copyright Heidelberg Reformation Association. All rights reserved. This is a Heidel Media production.